Hello there, welcome to Let's Analyze with IRAT. Today's video will be a continuation of the SQL tutorial playlist. In this video, we'll be discussing the group by clause, having clause, and the order by clause. Before we start, I want us to first discuss the aggregate functions like count, count distinct, min, max, average, and sum. Using a table in the schema, I'll be discussing each of these aggregate functions. Let's start with the count function. So I would select all from the order details table, as the table would be using to explain order details. A semicolon, and I'll run this. Let's bring it down to make it easy to see. Okay. The count is a function in SQL that shows the number of records from a table in the result. It shows the number of records from a table in the result. So this is the result grid. If we want to count the number of order IDs that are present in this result grid, all we need to do is select. Okay, let me write this again. Select from order details. I'm bringing this down so that we can easily read it. I want to bring out the count of the order IDs. I just want to count the order IDs. Count, and inside the bracket I would specify the column I want to count, which is the order ID. When I run this, you'd see that we have 2,155 order IDs. I can use an alias. Looking at the results grid, you can see here that we have count order ID as the column header. I can change the column header to, let's say, total orders. This AS keyword gives us the opportunity to change the column header, by it acts as an alias. So when I run this, you'd see that our column header over here would change from count of order ID to total orders. Run this. Right. So if you want your columns to have a more defined column headers, just use the AS keyword, that's the alias keyword. When we use a distinct keyword with a count function, the select query displays the number of unique data from a table, the number of unique data of a field from a table. Let's take, for instance, let me just copy this so that we don't keep on writing the same thing. If we look through this results grid, you'd notice that the product ID is acting as a foreign key, which means it can occur more than once. You can have product ID 57 occurring twice, maybe okay, this is a good example. This is another 57, and we have this 57 here. So we can count the number of unique product IDs in this table. I can do that by using the count distinct function. Let me add the indentation to make it more readable. In this case, I would say count, and within our parentheses, I would add the distinct keyword, distinct, and also add a parenthesis. Within this parenthesis, I'm going to specify the column I want to count. The column here is product ID. When I run this, you'd see that we have 77 products. And I can also give this an alias, saying as unique products. I have to use the underscore to separate the words. Perfect. In the case of main function, the main function returns the smallest value of a selected column. The smallest value. Now let me copy this again and run this. Let's take, for instance, we want to see the lowest quantity that was ordered. All we need to say is select mean. For every function, we would use a parenthesis. Mean of quantity. And I run this. 1 is the lowest quantity that was ordered. We can also use the max. Max function returns the largest value from a selected column. I'll copy this again, and instead of min, I'll change it to max. When I run this, you'd see that in the result grid, we have 130 as the highest quantity that was ordered. The sum function. The sum function returns the total sum of a numeric column. Using the select or using this table, let me copy this again and I run this again. Let's take, for instance, we want to return the sum of price that was ordered. Sum of price. Indentation to make it more readable. We want to use the sum function, and what we want to sum is the unit price. Unit price. When we run this, you'd see the total unit price. We can always round this up to 2 decimal places, 1 decimal places, or just round it to a whole number. We can do this by using the round function. The round function before the sum, because we want to round this output. We want to round it up to a particular number. Here I won't specify the number at first. I want us to see what would happen. When I run this, you'd see that the entire value has been changed or converted to a whole number. Because we are dealing with money, we are dealing with price, it's best for us to round it up to 2 decimal places. So I'll use the comma and 2. That is before the end of this bracket. So we specified what we want to round, and we specified the amount of decimal places we want to round it up to. So I'll run this. And now you can see that we have our output exactly the way we want it. So the average function. The average function returns the average value of a numeric column. To use the average function, we'll use the AVG. AVG is the function name. So I'm going to select all from the others table. Select all from other details. Return the average unit price. The average unit price. So say AVG unit price. And I'll run this. Just like the other time, let's round this up to 2 decimal places. Right. So the average unit price is $26.22. All these aggregate functions can be used with the group by statement. The group by clause specifies how to group data in your results. It's often used with the aggregate functions like the count, sum, average, mean, and max, which we've discussed earlier. It allows you to perform calculations on group of rows rather than the entire data set. The syntax is as thus: group by, and you specify the column name. You can specify 2 column names by using multiple columns. Group by is typically used with an aggregate function to summarize the data within each group. If you already have knowledge of the pivot table in Microsoft Excel, it will help you in understanding the group by function. Let's go straight to my SQL Workbench to practice the group by clause. With this statement, we are able to see the total unit price, but we didn't group the total unit price by any other column. With this example I'm about to discuss, we are going to copy this and we'll run it again. Instead of just seeing the total unit price, I want us to see group it by each product ID, which means we'll see each product ID and we'll see the total unit price for that particular product ID. I want us to select not just the total price, but also the product ID, and of course we use our comma to separate the columns that we're about to return. And also let's use an alias for this. Let's call this total price. If I try to run this without the group by function, I would get an error. This error code tells us that we have an aggregated query without a group by clause. So we need to specify the group by, which comes after the from clause. Group by. In this case, we want to group by the product ID. So specify product ID and we'll run this. Now we can see that we have our product IDs and their respective total prices. Let me use another example using the maximum quantity. I'll just copy this again and I'll paste it down here. I'll run it so that we recall what we saw. The maximum quantity. But here, let's group the maximum quantity by product ID. So we'll see each product ID and their respective maximum quantity. Product ID. We use a comma. And let's give this an alias as highest quantity ordered. Right. Of course, with group by, I almost forgot. Group by product ID. Run this. Right. You can now see that the highest order for each product ID is being displayed. Now let's discuss the having clause. The having clause is just like where clause, but you cannot use the having clause without a group by clause. Just like the where clause is used to filter our result to a particular condition, the having clause also does the same thing. Using the previous statement we just ran, let me copy it and bring it down. Right. Let's say our condition is to see the products that got orders above 100 quantities. If we use the having clause, that means we won't see product IDs like product 11, product ID 72 because they are below 100. So I'm going to write this statement now. We always use the having clause after the group by clause. Having, copy this instead of writing it again, above, higher than 100. When I run this, you would see that we only have product IDs that were above, that got quantities ordered above 100. We can also have a condition. Let me see if I can copy from, okay, let me copy from this one. I'll run it again. Okay. Let's take, for instance, we only want to see the product ID 75, 15, and 67. We don't want to see any other product ID. We are not interested in the others. In that case, we'll use the having clause and the in clause. So we are going to say having the product ID in, so we are going to give it a list of values in 75, 15, and 67. After running this, you see that every other product ID is not displayed, just the ones we specified. Now let's discuss the order by clause. The order by clause shows the order in which our result will be displayed, whether in descending order or ascending order. I want to copy one of this code again because I don't want us to spend too much time repeating the same code. I'll just copy this one again. But for practice sake, you can always rewrite this code from scratch so that you can remember how the syntax works. So I'll run this code again. And in this case, we have our product ID and the highest quantity ordered. But what if we want to see the highest quantity ordered from highest to lowest? We'll use the order by clause. We'll order by the highest quantity ordered to be in descending, DESC. When I run this, you now see that our output is sorted in descending order. We can always sort in ascending order as well by using the ASC. We can see that our output is in ascending order. If we just use the order by without the ASC, this will still give us our output in ascending order, because ascending is the default order for the order by clause. The order by clause is very straightforward. It's just about sorting our data in ascending or descending order. Let me copy this again. Okay, so the total price, I would order by descending, order by total price, descending. Instead of using the alias, I can also use the code itself. So instead of using total price, I can copy this and replace it with the total price. When I run this, we would still get the same output. That's the order by clause. Very straightforward. I also want us to discuss limits. Limit allows us to limit the results to a particular amount of rows. The SQL Workbench automatically limits our results to just 1000 rows. If we come up here, we can see a drop down where we can specify the total number of rows we want to limit our output to. But it's best to leave it as 1000 rows to increase efficiency and the speed. If I copy this code and I take it down, after running this, you can see that we have more than 10 outputs. I can limit the number of rows to just 5. When I limit to just 5, you would see that we have just 5 rows in our output. We can also limit to 10. If we count this, we would see that we have 10 rows. Even from the action output, we can see here that we have 10 rows returned. Now that we have understood the basic concept of these clauses, I want us to analyze and try to bring outputs from our data. I also want you to practice different questions. Just try to extract different values. Give yourself questions to extract and extract values. Just play around with what you've learned so far. Let's take, for instance, I want to see the top 10 products with the highest revenue. With the highest revenue. Okay. In this case, we'd select, let me write the form. We want to select from the other details table. Let's select all so that we can be seeing our output as we're writing the statement. Since we want to see the top 10 products with the highest revenue, we know that revenue would be we know that revenue would be the multiplication of the unit price and the quantity. So let's first multiply the unit price times the quantity. You can now see our output. But I also want us to return the product ID because it's going to be the top 10 product IDs. We've established this as the revenue, so we'll say as revenue. Okay. This is our revenue. We want to see the product ID also, so we'll call the product ID. Okay. We use our comma separator. So we are going to group by. From here, we can see that we haven't grouped the value. We are still getting over 1,000 rows. So we are going to group this. We'll group it by the product ID. But we know that we can't group by without the aggregate function. So we are going to use the sum, and I'm going to run this. Now we can see that we have the sum of revenue for each product ID. We'd also round this to 2 decimal places. So we'd say round, comma 2. Now run this. Now that we have our product and revenue, we need to sort the revenue in descending order so that we can be sure that our revenue is starting from the highest to the lowest. So I'm going to use the order by clause, order by revenue in descending. I'll run this again. Now we can see our revenue is sorted in descending order. The last thing we want to do is to limit this to just 10 rows since we said we want the top 10. So we are going to use our limits to 10. After running this, you'd see that we now have our top 10 revenue. I want you to work on this question. Find the total revenue and the total discount for each product, but only show the products with the total discount above $2, which means you are going to be using the having clause for this condition, and you'd use the select statement to select the total revenue and the total discount. I'm going to leave the statement in the description below, but I want you to try it first. If you are able to get it, give yourself a pat on the back. But if you're unable to get it, I would advise you watch some of the videos again. And also, you can write in the comment section the parts you find difficult to understand. That will be all for this video. If you found this helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And maybe share it with people you know will find this video helpful. Bye for now.